Hello everybody, my name is Suzana. This is my presentation for Chapter 10, Understanding Intersectionality Through Classism. I've been a student here at Delta for over 2 years, and I am working on getting my certification and associate's degree in paralegal, and I hope you guys enjoy. This is the table of contents, basically what I'm going to be speaking on in this presentation. All of these are the names I put for each slide, just to better identify them and what to expect. These are not titles from the book itself. This is all just made from my understanding of it. So, first slide. What is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a big word in this chapter. It is used to describe how different aspects of a person's identity overlap. These identities could be their race, gender, class, sexuality, disability, and many more. These are overlapping identities that can create unique experiences for everyone. It could be experiences of discrimination or privilege, and it's very unfortunate because this is you could say that intersectionality has a big role in as to say that this can cause a lot of discrimination in between different people. So I chose this picture. This picture was taken not too long ago in 2020. This was in the Capitol and right outside of the White House. It was a big celebration. Not much of a protest, but it was a celebration for the winning of Biden. And so you can see right there, they've got many posters with different pictures like Donald Trump and just mainly very political. And it was a big moment for the Democratic Party. So, where do these experiences happen? Intersectionality and discrimination could happen in schools, such as discipline, academic expectations, or bullying. It can happen in workplaces, like hiring, pay gaps, promotions. It can also happen in healthcare, which is access to treatment, quality of care. Also, housing and online spaces, such as representation, stereotypes, and harassment, which is another form of bullying, online bullying. So, to define classism, it is based on a person's social or economic class. It is a belief that people with more wealth or status are superior than those who don't have it. And nation. I chose like within the chapter. And it says segregation enabled them not to see the methods used to keep the black man away from their neighborhoods and their jobs, and not to feel as badly about the bargain. But they knew not to say aloud what they didn't want to see or feel. Mr. Rich White knew what was in their hearts and smiled. Plus, no connections. So, uh, stepping stones or opportunities to and this really just sucks because you know like myself, um I wasn't born in a rich family, and I don't have things that would normally be paid for by parents, like such as a car, utility, or just like a college fund. um this is not because they don't want to give me those things, but it's because they are just unable to grant me them because uh, I live in a low income family. Has economical wealth, and I don't. So, moving on, intersectionality and social class. So, intersectionality and social class work together by showing that economic inequality is shaped by multiple overlapping identities. Social class determines access to income, wealth, and power, but it does not affect everyone in the same way. So, this picture right here from JSTOR, and you can see how uh, this how their social class determines how the type of lifestyle that they are going to have. And so here is this picture. It's an empty road, and on the sidewalk you can see how there are many might have their belongings there because they don't have a place to stay at. They obviously are disadvantaged, and each and every one of them have a story on why they are there. Many could be just because they didn't have anything handed to them, and they didn't have a stepping stone to actually achieve all of these things that are normal to people who have an economical setting or any economical advantaged. So, examples of intersectionality through classism. So, class does not operate independently, it intersects with race, gender, immigration status, and education. Individuals from marginalized racial or ethnic groups often face both economic advantage and systemic discrimination. Women in lower income brackets may experience the combined effects of wage inequality and limited economic mobility. Immigrants with limited education or language access may encounter additional barriers to employment and financial stability. These overlapping identities can intensify poverty and restrict access to opportunity. So, with this, we know that everyone that has a type of mostly you can see this in women and immigrants, just because both may have lower income, or they may be facing just some life things that can not get them to where they want to be financially. And with women, we see it a lot with single mothers who try to maintain their children and at the same time have a job, and many of them also trying to pursue an education, and it's very hard for them. They especially with the lower income, it can just limit their mobility. And with immigrants, limited education for them, they especially illegal immigrants who come here, they don't get advantages, many advantages, such as like education or jobs, because now a high school diploma is needed, or just your citizenship or residency, whatever it is needed to have a good sustainable job that can just keep you living a good life here in the United States. And so these are the identities and the intensification of their poverty because of their personal identity. Really a background onto why I chose this picture on JSTOR, but it is just a picture of, you can see women, there's men, each woman with disadvantages or advantages are different racially and ethnically, and everyone has their class rank, and we will get into that later on in this presentation. Social class groups. Social class shapes people's opportunities, resources, and power in society. The authors explain that class positions are not fixed and can shift over time, but society commonly recognizes several class groups based on income, work, and access to resources. These class groups can be the owning class, people who inherit or control wealth and do not rely on wages. The middle class, people who work for income and often have higher education. The working class, people who rely on labor jobs and have limited economic security. The poor, people who depend on assistance or experience unstable employment. And here's lastly, there's a quote I chose from the chapter, page chapter 10, page 162. Class positions. Read what each class is and kind of think of where you may fall into these categories and what class you are and what disadvantages you might expect or live. Can contribute to class inequality. The reading explains the value of their labor, which can lead to unequal working conditions and not many resources for workers. These examples are workers competing for fewer resources and benefits, low wages and poor labor conditions in industries, sweatshops where workers work long hours for extremely low pay. These sweatshops are, big companies who have these different people working in them, and mainly just low income people who are here working for long hours and receiving little to just $1 a day. And it can happen. It does happen within the United States, but it happens mainly all over the world, and these companies are mainly controlled by the United States. And it's very unfortunate because they should be getting paid normally, like normal. Especially because they are working in exchange or even a benefit. So what we are seeing in this picture on the right, this was taken in New York in 2012. What appears to be a sweatshop, and here's a woman. So another activity: worker compensation and power. So here is a quick scenario. A company makes millions in profit each year. The CEO earns 8 million annually, and the average worker earns not even half of that, a small percentage of it, $38,000 annually, which is which could fall into low income class. Workers are workers are asking for higher wages but are told the company cannot afford it. So, you can be understanding of their power. To be understanding of their power, you can ask yourself, who has decision-making power in this company? And how do you know? Or how does salary reflect power within the organization? Or who determines what labor is worth? Moving on, how classism functions in society. So, using the scenario, we had mentioned Mr. Rich White and Mr. Poor White. You can see how Mr. Rich White holds economic power, which is money, land, and resources. Mr. Poor White lacks wealth but is offered social status in exchange for loyalty towards Rich White. The bargain: you protect the system and you receive status over others, even without wealth. And so this keeps the poor and working class individuals divided instead of working together to fight this type of intersectionality, segregation. The wealthy maintain control while class inequality continues. And it's a harsh reality, but there's really not much we can do about it, and it's just an ongoing problem that there is. And it's good to be, educated on why these things work the way they do. In society, you can see how there is a growing wealth inequality. This means that income inequality increases and has significantly in recent decades. The gap between wealthy elites and average workers continues to grow, showing how economic systems often benefits those who already have wealth and power. And she is running some errands. She might be in Walmart, and she has her 3 kids. You can see this picture and probably kind of think what is happening, and what could be happening is that there's an economic decline, mainly in her region. Like in this picture, the person here is having decline because she might be relying on coal for the light. In Kentucky, 2013. The poorest has widened immensely. In other words, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. So now we are gonna speak on the pyramid of capitalism. This is actually a visual representation of how wealth and power are distributed in a capitalist system. I was not able to find the image from the textbook, but it's mainly a pyramid, like a big triangle, and at the very top you can see that there is these wealthy elites, and at the very bottom it is the working class, and in the middle it's just in the middle. Middle of both categories. So better understanding is a small group at the top controls most of the wealth and resources. The larger working class at the bottom provides labor and support. The system relies on the labor of the many to sustain the power of the few. And what this picture is, it shows a visual on economic inequality and class hierarchy. And right here on the right, here's the picture I chose from JSTOR. You can see how then there's these people with fancy clothes, probably very wealthy people, billionaires, millionaires, all coming together, and maybe they just got out of a gathering or a party. You see this a lot in politicians or these CEOs of $1 million companies. And so this actually comes from, I believe, a article on the distribution of wealth and how it's very uneven. There's no middle class to speak of, and this was in 2005. So a while ago, but still it's a big showing of an understanding of capitalism and how it operates. So now, class privilege and social inequality. So class privilege refers to the disadvantages individuals experience because of their socioeconomic position. Access to resources, opportunities, and social power is shaped by class, which influences many aspects of daily life. Understanding class privilege helps reveal how social systems distribute resources and unevenly and maintain class inequality. So, um, here's a quote, page 178. Class may arguably be the foundational form of oppression, as it is ultimately about the distribution of resources. So, whenever you hear the word oppression, it mainly might come from. Um, so, whenever you hear the word class, it may be um, used to just identify the oppression that is used against these people of different backgrounds. And here is a picture again from JSTOR. Here's there seems to be a family sitting outside their front or backyard of their mobile home or trailer. And this was an article based on migrant workers, and you can see how maybe because they are immigrants, they might not have the advantages that other people have, such as like owning a house or, you know, being able to have these jobs with higher pay. And in this case, they might not. To reflect on about class and social mobility. Here's the prompt. So think about two students. Student A works full-time while in school, and student B does not need to work. You can ask yourself, how might class socialization affect their college experience? Or who has more access to cultural capital, and why? Intersectionality. So again, intersectionality explains that social identities such as race, gender, and class cannot be understood separately. Instead, they interact and shape people's experiences of privilege and oppression simultaneously. I can say the word. And intersectionality and inequality work together. Mr. Poor White, how that led to them just turning onto each other, and having this hate towards one another, towards other people, because they wanted to be in a certain economical stage in their life. And a quote to look at from page 175. Intersectionality is the idea that identity cannot be fully understood via a single lens, such as gender, race, or class alone. That is another explanation on intersectionality. So here are the impacts of classism in marginalized groups. This could be economic barriers, such as limited job opportunities, wage gaps, generational poverty. It can also be education inequality, such as underfunded schools, fewer resources, reduced college access. Also, health disparities, like limited healthcare, chronic stress, or mental health strain. It can also be a social stigma, like stereotyping, exclusion, internalized shame, or housing inequality, like segregated neighborhoods, unsafe living conditions, or displacement. Here are two pictures from JSTOR. Right here you can see on the top right, there's a man who is waiting on the bus. He is currently looking at the times of the maybe like the bus arrivals, and so he might be trying to get home, trying to get to a friend's house or work, or having a person to rely on. So he is using these benefits within the city to get to where he needs to be. And below that is a picture of two workers who are working on it, maybe a structure, a bridge, or a machine. You can see how very dangerous this job can be, but they are doing it because who else is going to do it? And also, they might be getting paid enough, just right, or not good at all. Maybe experienced by people who are of low income, people like immigrants who have to get jobs are who that can be very dangerous and not paid enough. They are not being paid enough to do these jobs that are putting their lives at risk. You living with immigrant parents, I can see how company where very badly, and they are putting in work and hours, and they still aren't able to get a higher pay, or they've been having a job there for over 20 years, and they're being paid like 16 an hour, or just they don't have any benefits because their their immigration status is just not what is expected. But these companies are using these workers illegally so that they don't have to pay them more, because they know that they're giving them a job and they are doing them a favor when they are really not doing a favor, but they are giving them a source of income because they won't be able to find it elsewhere. And so by that, they are using these workers and benefiting from them, even while being a multi-million-dollar company. Analysis, you can recognize overlapping inequalities, such as people that experience multiple forms of discrimination at the same time. This discrimination can be from their race, class, or gender, or many. Solutions, like policies and programs that are effective and overlooked in social justice efforts. So moving on, this is the vocab for my chapter. Here's a keyword, segregation. So its definition is it's the separation of ethnic groups leading to unequal access to opportunities and resources. Now, feminism, it is the movement to end sexism and obtain gender equality. Oppression means a system where a group holds power over another group, depriving them of their rights and opportunities. Binary, its definition is ignoring complexity by separating people or ideas into two categories opposite from each other. Class, its definition is a social group based on income, education, occupation, and access to resources. Classism, its definition is discrimination or prejudice based on someone's social or economic class. Capitalism, Class socialization is the act of learning the norms, values, and behaviors of a social class. Ideological socialization is the way that we are taught to be accepting of dominant systems and beliefs and see them as normal or natural. And consolidation is the concentration of power and money into fewer individuals throughout time. And then social mobility, its definition is the act of moving higher or lower social classes. And capital that give someone advantages in society. Now, hierarchy is the system that ranks groups of individuals as less or more valuable or powerful. And intersectionality, its definition is the idea that social identities such as race, class, gender, etc. overlap and shape experiences of oppression and privilege. And lastly, class warfare. It is a problem or conflict between social classes, mainly between the wealthy and the working class. So, resources from the library that I chose to write down quick little quotes that may be helpful when reading this chapter, that offers some insight on terms and how just things work, classism and corporate stuff. So, understand neoliberalism and the rise of corporate power. I chose this from the book Political Power in America. And it says, despite the rollback of business power during this period in the last 4 decades, we have seen the rise of a neoliberal era marked by the growing power of a corporate capitalist underclass, which exercises power over politics, and in which the mass public's impact on the political system has significantly declined. So, what does this mean? It means that economic power increasingly centrated among wealthy corporations and elites. Political decisions may prioritize corporate interests over public needs. Marginalized groups, low-income communities, people of color, immigrants, etc., are often disproportionately affected by these policies, and it shows how economic class intersects with race, gender, and other identities in shaping inequality. So in the real world, we can see how this plays with politics, because there was this period of time to where people were not in support of Donald Trump, the president, because listed that he was going to be more on the part of the billionaires and people with money instead of those who don't have those advantages. And so we can see how political decisions prioritized corporate interests over the public. Going on to the next one, education, inequality, and social capital. I chose this quote on the book Race and Gender in the Classroom, and it says, where it matters and how it matters for these groups, however, depends on where one lives, how one was socialized, and one's access to economic, social, political, and cultural capital. Regardless, the bottom line is that race and gender are very important social topics in all of our lives, and perhaps no institution is more adept at reproducing racial and gender inequality than the U.S. educational system. So we can see that access to resources and education often varies by race, gender, and social economic class. Students have students that have wealthier backgrounds often have more resources, support systems, and opportunities. And schools can unintentionally reinforce inequalities through funding gaps, tracking, and access to advanced programs. It shows how multiple identities, race, gender, and class intersect to shape educational experiences. So, in the educational system, we can see how some people might be going to like private schools, or some people go to a more of a public school, and how that can be how these differentiate is that people who go to a private school are actively paying to be there, and so they will be getting things that are funded that in public schools might not, like a higher variety, like advantages of like taking classes for college. Understanding poverty in the United States. So right here I chose this quote from Ending Poverty as We Know It. It is from the Delta Library, and it says, "We have an official that many more people in this country, especially working people, are poor than the official numbers indicate." So it says the official poverty measure may underrepresent the true level of economic hardship, and poverty disproportionately affects marginalized groups, including racial minorities and single-parent households. This demonstrates how class inequality intersects with race, gender, and employment opportunities. So this is also another example of what we had spoke about when I had mentioned how people's backgrounds and opportunities kind of lay out how their future is looking out to be. So, immigrant workers and workplace inequality. In the United States, 16% of workers are foreign born, and an estimated 5.4% are undocumented. Many of these workers are concentrated in low-wage industries where workplace violations are endemic, such as a wage theft, unsafe work conditions, workplace injury, sexual harassment, and unjust terminations. And immigrant and undocumented workers are particularly at risk. This is from Immigration and Work. From and high-risk jobs. There's lack of legal protection or fear of deportation that may make the workers feel less likely to report exploitation. It demonstrates how immigration status, class, and oftentimes race and ethnicity intersect to create vulnerability in the labor market. And it highlights structural inequalities that affect workers' rights, safety, and economic stability. So this means that many of these workers, because of their immigration status and fear of being deported, they may not reach out when there is a work problem or something that needs to be reported, something that's very serious, like sexual harassment or violence. Anything because they don't want to lose their jobs. Moving on to the next one, gender inequality in work and labor. So here's a quick quote I chose from the book Gender, Class, Equality, and Political Economies. Today, women often complete more years of education than men, but afterwards, gender inequalities in paid and unpaid work widen across adulthood. More men than women are employed continuously and work full rather than part-time. Men also enjoy greater average wages. Women in turn spend more time than men in unpaid housework and childcare, whether or not they are employed. So by this, even with higher levels of education, women often face lower pay and fewer continuous career opportunities. They also tend to carry a larger share of unpaid domestic labor, which can limit career advancement. So gender inequality in work contributes to economic inequality between men and women, and intersectionality shows that these effects can be even greater for women of color, immigrant women, and low-income women. So this kind of highlights back to when I was mentioning how women who are like single mothers who are working, taking care of their kids, and apart from that, they are also in school or continuing their education. They are oftenly not being paid enough because they are doing a part-time job, or they just aren't able to. They aren't able to get a job that does give them an adequate amount of money. The Great Recession and Employment Inequality. Here's a quote I chose from What Works for Workers from the Delta Library, and it says, "The Great Recession appears to have worsened these outcomes. Since 2007, employment rates have declined the most among young, less educated, and minority men. In other words, mostly the same groups whose employment and earnings had already been worsening earlier. So this means economic downturns often impact marginalized groups more severely. Young workers, people with less education, and minority communities may face higher unemployment rates, and existing inequalities in employment can worsen during economic crisis. It also demonstrates how class, race, age, and education intersect to shape economic outcomes." And now to end my presentation, this is my bibliography. These are all of the resources that I used from within the chapter and within the Delta Library. And once again, thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day.